It's a little medley from Echo and the Bunnymen that goes under the title of Do It Clean. Now, I calculate that approximately 1.5 million LPs will be sold in this country this week. Now, most of those will obviously be chart albums with current hit singles on them, but quite a lot of them will be records that were actually released a number of years ago. For instance, 55,000 copies of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon were sold in the UK last year. That's 10 years after its original release. Stuart Hartley works for the HMV chain of shops and has had the opportunity to observe this phenomenon at close quarters. Now, Stuart, we're just talking about Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, 10 years old. Who buys it in 1984? What sort of people?
Well, I think basically it's two groups, more or less divided by age. There are those people who were around at the time who could have bought it but didn't. And since then, they've heard it at other people's houses or at parties or bits of soundtracks on TV and so on. They've subsequently gone out and just filled a hole in the collection. The other people are those people who are much younger, who've come upon Pink Floyd in recent times, who weren't around when the album was first released. And they're now buying it and picking up on Pink Floyd now.
So this point about word of mouth is very important, is it? I mean, these are records that people trust, having heard them at people's houses and things like that.
I would doubt if very many of these LPs are bought without people knowing them pretty well before they buy them. They're just reassuring themselves about something by simply owning it.
Yeah.
One of the things that amazes me about the chart, which we're going to see at the end, is that the highest Beatles album is in this chart is at position number 20, Sgt. Pepper. Why are there no Beatles albums higher than that?
Well, I think the other thing you have to bear in mind is that despite the fact that these are albums selling over a period, there is still an element of fashion. If you take an example, for instance, the Doors' first album, a number of Doors albums, in fact, are now selling very, very well. But if you went back to the mid-70s, that wasn't true. But when Joy Division had the success, that meant people went back, read about, heard about the Doors and started to buy their old albums.
Looking at the records here, there seem to be a fair proportion of what we could call fairly middle-of-the-road records, like Abraxas by Santana, Eagles, Hotel California, Supertramp records.
That's right.
There's very little that could be called punky. We've got Ian Dury, New Boots and Panties.
Well, this is the nearest to it. This is the Stranglers' Rattus Norvegicus.
Why don't we have a Sex Pistols record in here, or a Clash record?
Well, I think that in the case of the Sex Pistols, that phenomena was simply an event in time. It was an album where there was almost a mania for the band. They became incredibly famous or infamous over a short period of time, and people bought the record, and it stood for something. It wasn't just the music.
Also, presumably,
these musically are very successful and last and wear well.
And if people wanted a type of record for it to suit every occasion, that would be the punk record, presumably they'd choose, wouldn't it be?
Yes, I suppose so. It sums up a period, a type of music.
What's it like with singles? Does the same sort of thing apply with singles? What sort of things would a shop always have to keep on a 45?
Well, again, things have changed with singles because of the format moving from the popularity of the 7-inch single to the 12-inch single. If you went back to the early 70s, the popular singles were on 7-inch, and they were things like... What sort of things? Well, like Bohemian Rhapsody or Bridge Over Troubled Water, Hey Jude, those sort of things. I Heard It Through the Grapevine was one great seller. But then there was a period when a number of independent bands or bands on independent labels didn't make albums, didn't make the charts for various reasons. And those singles became sort of steady back catalogue sellers. But now it's 12 inches.
Which albums do you think, we haven't counted in the chart the stuff that came out in the last 4 years, which things have come out recently that do you think will be best sellers in the future?
That's very, very difficult to say, but I think if you named 2 or 3, then Duran Duran, Rio, Michael Jackson, Thriller, Culture Club, Kissing to be Clever, I think they'll probably stand the test of time.
Well, we shall see. Thanks a lot for coming in, Stuart, anyway. And we're going to show you now the back catalogue bestsellers chart as compiled by HMV in Oxford Street. And this doesn't include compilation albums. It's simply all stuff that came out in the last 4 years. It's simply original albums that have continued to sell and sell and sell. And by way of illustration, appropriately enough, we have an LP that's refused to stop selling since it came out in '73, Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells.